If you think by being a musician and being a creative, do you think that's made you think more about the past, or do you think it makes you think more about the future?
I guess with this project that I'm just releasing, it's more about the past, because a lot of the songs from the album were found in a old red book that had songs written over a span of kind of 10-15 years. So certainly with this project, it's definitely about the past and reassessing those compositions.
When was the last time you found the book or read the book before you discovered it again?
I think I'd packed it when I moved from Glasgow back to Falkirk after I had my daughter, but I didn't properly look at it. It was just shoved in a box and, oh, that might be useful one day kind of thing. So that was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, yeah.
What was the first thought that kind of came into your head when you opened it up and you started having a look through it again?
Well, the songs had always been like floating around the back of my mind, and sometimes I would pick up an acoustic guitar or an electric and try and just, play them to remember the melody of them. But yeah, I mean, it was one of these things where you look through the lyrics and think, oh yeah, okay, I remember that one. And yeah, so the songs were always there, but it was just a case of trying to remember how they all fit together,
What's generally like? Do you have a lot of songs that are kind of unreleased and in the back catalogue, or what's the kind of ratio like to things that come out and things that?
There's a lot, but sometimes it's just, a lot of these songs would have maybe fitted on the second LP that my old band Y'all's Fantasy Island did, called Rescue Weekend. They probably would have found home on there somewhere, but for some reason they just either never got recorded, or they just I don't know. They have to speak. They have to like demand that they go on the album, and some of these songs, for whatever reason, have not.
So does this upcoming record, does it kind of occupy similar emotional territory to the first kind of ones that you've done around that time?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, some of the songs aren't even that old, but it's definitely the same kind of energy as the first two Y'all's Fantasy Island albums, I think. It's just stripped back and minimal instrumentation.
So is this you kind of singing from the perspective of you then, or is there any kind of like looking back, or?
So most of the perspective is from characters and people that I've heard stories of over the years, or sometimes stories that I've just embellished for narrative purposes and stuff. So most of the songs are written from the perspective of fictional characters.
Do you kind of embody the character when you're in the headspace of writing?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, to a certain extent, you have to. It's just like, I guess, trying to maybe write a character for film or for a play or a book or that kind of thing.
How does that self-expression compare when you're writing like through a character to when you're just writing yourself, writing from your own perspective?
I guess you always even filter when you're writing about yourself to some extent. So I guess writing from a narrative perspective is a bit more freeing, because you can delve into places that you wouldn't normally go from a personal perspective.
It just makes it a little bit easier to kind of be honest.
I guess so, yeah.
So is there any kind of, do you think there's a tinge of nostalgia about the record in any way, or is it very much kind of from that period?
Yeah, maybe nostalgia from looking back and perusing over these old songs and finding, relearning them and restructuring them. So there's a personal nostalgia from that side, but in terms of like a sonic nostalgia, I don't really think there's that much,
The lead single as well off of Erotic Thistle. The thing I really love about that is you take these kind of everyday, like idiosyncratic little minute details that are really authentic and really personal, and contrast them with this kind of darkness that's at the heart of that song, and a kind of darker emotional territory.
Yeah.
When you're writing, just naturally, do you feel like you're more attracted to writing about lighter topics or darker ones? What kind of comes?
I think I would say the majority of the lyrics are like on the dark side. I don't know. It's just it's maybe like the same with Arab Strap and like growing up in Falkirk. There's definitely like a humour, a kind of like a defeatist humour about the town. So there's always that, you know. It's yeah. I'm more drawn to the Blackley comic situations and maybe the horror of everyday minutiae, that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely like a kind of humorous edge to a lot of the wee details I've mentioned.
Yeah.
How does humour affect the way it feels for you, like when you're performing it and when you're writing it?
It's quite important. I mean, it's hard to do in song, be funny or even like half funny. It's pretty difficult to do, and I'm not a big fan of comedy songs, but for sure when you listen to somebody like Tom Waits or like Randy Newman, you will hear elements of dark comedy in there, and that's my type of thing, you know.
I guess it organically just kind of comes from the nature of the track. And it doesn't feel forced in any way, it's very kind of free and natural.
Yeah.
Can music still offer an escape for you when you're tackling such dark topics then? Is it still a pleasant kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's more of a... Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a big escape element to getting meshed into the creative process, for sure. But I find playing live more of a cathartic release, you know. But for sure, it's definitely nice to be completely focused and involved in a project.
Do you remember the first time you discovered how cathartic playing music live could be?
I think so. I was in a really not a very good kind of punk covers band in 1996 called Flood, and I was like about 14, and we played at the local venue, which was the Martel, in a bit of a rough area of Falkirk, and it was like a battle of the bands night, and it was really the crowd were really into it. And sorry, I'm just getting distracted by the wasp.
Top of the head.
Oh shit. Hope it goes away. There we go. Yeah, so that kind of battle of the bands evening was really, that was like the moment, you know, when you could realise that you could share this emotional connection with other folk, you know.
What would you say is the biggest kind of musical epiphany you've had in that sense?
Musical epiphany. I can't really say. I guess it was when you just learn to stop kind of caring about doing it a certain way and whether or not you're technically proficient or, you know, any of that kind of bullshit. It's when you realise that perhaps that you've created something that's of your own style. That's maybe when you're like, yeah, this kind of sounds like me, rather than, you know, sounds like the Talking Heads or other bands, you know.
You find your own voice.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, that's... But in terms of technical epiphany, I'm not sure. When I first heard Steve Reich do Phaseology and the particular record is drumming, and he also did an album called Music for 18 Musicians. That the whole kind of way of him staggering the bars of music and creating a phase, a staggered phase, was I kind of realised then that how much modern music had relied on that technique. So it was almost like an epiphany in the sense of, all right, that's where like all these bands got their sound from. You know, he He was a kind of modernist master in that way.
How did that then go into effect what you were creating? Once you kind of
Well, I mean, obviously I tried to rip it off, so
When it-
and I still try and rip it off.
We were speaking a wee bit about escapism earlier on as well. Is it easier for you, do you think, to escape when you're constructing lyrics and when you're creating instrumentation?
Instrumentation, definitely. I really struggle with the lyric side of things.
Is that what infused the last record before this one? Because it was kind of more on the instrumental side compared to the...
Yeah. I mean, I just... I told people at the time as a joke that I couldn't be bothered writing lyrics, but it was the opposite. It was just that every time I put pen to paper, I got the fear, it was just coming out with rubbish. So I just decided to leave it by the wayside and focus on the instrumentation. And I think, like, with instrumental music, if there's no lyrical content to follow, then you can kind of transcend normal emotions. Usually when you're writing a song, you are dictating to somebody what they should be feeling, or certainly giving them a hint of the emotion, whereas with instrumental music it bypasses that. It just goes straight to the emotion, which I really like as well.
Yeah, it just allows people to kind of completely
Yeah.
impart their own thing. When you're at a show, has there ever been an emotion like that you've seen someone imparting upon something that surprised you, or a reaction that surprised you?
I don't really look at the audience when I'm playing. I think most people that don't know my stuff that come to see me live are maybe a little bit not shocked, but certainly they will question whether or not it is music they are listening to. I've heard said on several occasions, like the guy who runs the record label Song by Toad. We played a gig in Summer Hall a few years ago, and he said that there was somebody running around the room at the end shouting, "This is not music. This is not music." So I like to have that negative effect on strangers.
Do you ever surprise yourself when you're writing? You mentioned the person's shocked.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, the stuff that, like, the analogy goes that it's like, trying to dial into like a radio wave that's broadcasting a song, and I'm not sure who described it as that, but sometimes it can be like that. It can be almost instantaneous. You hear whatever's coming at you from the ether, and yeah, that's the only way I can explain that type of sudden creativity.
At the heart of your music, sometimes there is a slight lonesomeness and a slight isolation, kind of from a narrative point of view. Do you think making music overall has brought you closer to other people or drawn you further away?
Well, it's definitely brought me closer to a lot of people that I know just through playing music, and through people getting in touch about the music and stuff, and other bands and friends that come that way. So I would say it's definitely brought me closer to people.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Thank you very much, man.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks.